Hello, welcome back. Today we are going to do a nice little country scene. Learn a few more techniques using our fan brush. Okay, so let's get started with that. Right now you're going to do you need a ruler and measure. Just to kind of keep you on the same page with me, I went down 2 3/4 and 2 3/4 and then drew a line across from my sky. To start, the end of the path is at 3 3/4. And down here from this corner over is 5 1/2. So I put a mark for that. When you draw your pathway, just give it a little bit of slope here and then come up and meet at this point. This other part of this pathway is going to be at that point and follow this, and it gets wider as you go down. Things get a lot smaller as it gets further away. So put your pathway in there. We're going to start with the sky. We'll use our wide brush and white and put that on thick enough so it doesn't dry on us. We don't want it to dry before we can get our blue blended in. And I like to do this on the canvas so that it gives me different values in that paint and it's not all one exact shade, is why I do not pre-mix this for the sky. So we get our white on there. Now when we pull the blue, a little bit at a time, we can add to the sky, but we cannot take the blue out of the white. So very small amounts here. We start at the top. Let's get a little more. And then we take that shade and we bring it down. Again, take from the top and slowly pull down. I said we could add blue, but we cannot take it out of the white. So there we are. And I'm not adding and adding and adding to my brush, because if I keep adding the blue on my brush, then we'll end up with an evening, a late evening sky, and I want the daytime sky right now. All right, your final sweep should go completely off of the page so you don't have hesitation marks in your painting. Off the page for my final. Okay, so now there's my sky. Now we want to do a pathway. For the pathway, I'm going to get a medium flat brush here. So we're going to take white, yellow, and brown. And again, add small amounts to the white. It's easier to add than it is to take it out. So we put the yellow and then pull a little bit of brown until we like our color. It's kind of a khaki color here. We're going to paint our pathway. And again, put it on heavy enough so that it doesn't dry out on us. Don't be sparing with this, or we won't be able to work into it. We need it wet. We're painting wet on wet right now. Okay, so there is my pathway color here. So I'm going to take my flat bristle brush, pull a little bit of brown, play with it on the side of the plate so that it's more of a dry brush, not clumps of paint on it. And we're going to come in here and just kind of, just with the tip, don't lay it down. We're just using the tips right now. It'll look like pebbles in the path or rocks, different values. And with this, it's okay to go off. Nobody's going to see it because we're going to add ground cover. And this way we can get all the way to the edge. So we have a little brown in there. Now we want a little gray. So I do the same with my black and play with it on the side of my plate. Wiping it off so when I tap it comes on very soft. We don't want hard black on here. We want more grays just to have that extra color. And right before we stop this, we're going to put a little shade along the edge here. So I'm going to take my flat brush again, pull a little black and make a gray. I haven't washed this brush yet so that I can make that gray. And that's going to be our shadow color here on the ground. As the grass is making just a little bit of shade here. So I'm just going right along that edge. Put a little shade. Don't put too much paint on your brush, because we're going to now just kind of blend this softly. All right, put my finger on it. All right, so now we have a little bit of shade going there. All right, I want you to hit pause right now and get it dry. Use your hair dryer, it'll rush it along, okay? So I'm going to hit pause with you and get mine dry. Okay, now we've got that dry. We're going to do our trees way back in the distance here. I took my green and I put a lot of brown into it. Not a whole lot, but a little brown into it to get it darker and more natural color. We have more browns in our greens in nature. So I'm going to start with that mix I did. And I'm going to use a stiff bristled brush. So we usually use at the least 3 shades in nature. So with this, I'm going to start up here. And I'm going to figure out, do not do these straight. Trees don't grow like that. There's many different trees. They all grow different levels. Excuse me. Allergies today. Here in Florida, for all you guys that are here in Florida with me, we have what's called red tide. Keeps your allergies at alert. I'm going to use a lot of this, put it on nice and thick. We're going to just keep dabbing until we fill all this in where we want it. Okay. Now, as I said, excuse me, in nature, there's at least 3 shades. So I had a little yellow to this color and make a medium green. That's the shade that I just did, the green that I made. I'm going to add some more yellow to it, here. Make a medium green. Put a little, a little bit of this color in here. Okay, so now we have 2 shades going. Now I want to go a little lighter. I'm going to take and add some white into that shade color I just made. And get my lightest color. With each color, you're going to do a little less. Don't need as much of the real light. Okay, so now we have 3 shades. We got our background done now. Now we are going to do our ground cover. I'm going to go to get another flat brush here. Oops, I'm going to get a little wider. Now for the ground cover, you're going to take green, yellow. It's going to take quite a bit of yellow. to make the light color we want. Because we don't want to start out too dark. If you start out dark, you tend to, the painting tends to be dark. So we're going to have the green, yellow, and a little bit of white, and a little brown. We're going to start with that. Mix that up real good till you get a light enough. See the difference in the colors? It's pretty light. And this shade I'm going to put right up against here. And it doesn't have to be level. Ground isn't always level. Alright. Now we're just going to fill this shade in. And go right on top of that. Make sure and go on top of, go over a little bit on your pathway so that you don't have any canvas showing in between. Put it on heavy enough. We do not want this to dry. And you're going to work pretty quick at this so that we can add some colors into here, different shades, different values of green. Again, I'm going to go right a little bit over so that you don't see the white of the canvas peeking through. I'm sorry for the sound of this board clanking. Now we're going to do it down here. And you see how thin I have it in the distance? You really aren't going to see a lot of the road up here. Our pathway. All right, right along this edge here. See how straight that line is? Well, nobody mowed our lawn. We really don't want it that straight. So I'm going to push a little of this shade up. I'm just going on the edge and I push up just, when I push it sticks it out just a little bit. And gives it a little rougher edge here. All right, so now we got that started. I'll go on this edge here. Now we'll have a shadow on this edge in different shades in here. So let's hurry and work in here before it dries. All right, so now we want to go lighter. So I'm taking that color I just made, adding some more white to it, and yellow. I'm going just a little lighter now. And get in here and just dab, dab, dab this color in. Right along the edges. We want many different values in here. Right up against your pathway. I'm doing this, and we'll have a few more shades, so we're not done adding color shades in here. White. Now I'm going to add a little bit brown to my mix. a different shade here, a little more yellow, a little more brown. And with each text, because the weeds that grow out there are all different shades of green, so we're going to do different shades of green ourselves. Get it as natural looking as we can. And this is brown and yellow mixed in that same color we just did. And you just put this on as you please. Now up here you're not going to see as much. It's going to be more of a blur the further back you get. I'm going to dab it just a little more, soften it up back here. All right, along this edge here, we're going to see some shadows. So let's take our original green and add a little bit of black to it. And carefully, we're going to go along this edge with this shade. Get us a little bit of a border here. And I'm going to switch to my flat brush so I can get closer to the edge. And we're putting, and when your grass grows, it's darkest down towards the root. And you're going to see that along a pathway, that different value to the green. You are not going to see it on this side. You can't see over a corner or through a corner. So if we're looking in this direction, we're only going to see it on that side. All right, that should be good. Up here is just dark. You really, like I said, you lose it up here. All right, so now we have our shade in here. And now we need, our tires are running along here, and it's not killing the grass through the center. So we need to put that grass into the center area. We're going to go back to the green we started with up in here. I'm going to just kind of make my marks where I want it. Down here's wider. As you go up, it gets thinner till it ends. Let's fill this in. Just follow your pathway. And again, put this on thick enough so we can add different values of green in it. All right, and our shade is going to be again on this right side is where we're going to see it. So let's get our dark green with a little bit of black in it. Let's get our shade in there. Be a little thick there. Now you can switch to a really small brush doing this. It might help keep you in the line so that you don't go outside of your line. It's a little liner brush, so when you come up here you can get thinner. Okay, so now we got shade going on that side. Now let's get all of our different values in there. Going to go back to our fan brush. And get our light color here. That's the green we did with the background. The yellow, a little brown. Let's start with that. And then here and add some of that. And then we'll go over the line, breaking it up. Let's get some of that in, just so it doesn't look like manicured. Get it a little rough. And play with your colors. See what colors you like putting in here, because you may like something a little different than I do. But try to keep them the color of nature. I found that a lot of people would just take a green and start painting with it. And if you don't put the browns in it or yellows, sometimes it'll end up looking more like a coloring book. And we're not wanting to do a coloring book. Okay? So try to get your browns in there. And the browns will help in different values, different light colors. Okay, so now we're going to hit pause again. We're going to dry this because we have our tree line done, our sky, our pathway. So now let's get all that dry so we don't put our hand, oops, I'm sorry, before we do that, let's figure out where we're going to put our tree and put a little color there real quick. Going back to that same brush, I haven't washed it yet. Take a little black and green. Make that dark shade that we did this shade here with. Figure out where we're going to put our tree. The bottom of our tree will be about right here. Not too much paint here. And just kind of dab it. Alright, get it softer. And if this is wet, it'll dab and kind of blend into that. Alright, so this is where I'm going to put my tree. Now we can dry. So everybody hit pause. Let's get this dried. Alright guys, now that we've got this dry and we won't have the green all over the side of our hands, we're going to get a small brush to do our tree with. Let's see which one I want to use. I'll try this one. Okay, for the base of our tree, I'm going to take brown and black, mix them up. I'm going to put some water in it because we want it to go on nice and smooth. And if it's too thick, it's really hard to make the small branches. So that's black and brown, small round brush. Start with our base. We're just going to kind of draw a line up here. And we're going to stop about there. Now the base of the tree gets wider than the top. And we have little branches that'll come out. So we'll put a couple of our branches in here. We can come back if we need to and add more. branches wherever we might need them. Alright, we're just going to start with a little skeleton tree. Now on one side we're going to need a little bit of light in there, or in the front, wherever your light is coming from. So I just, with my same brush, add a little white, played with it on the side so it's not extremely white. It came out a little tan. I'm going to highlight a little bit of these branches. Alright, so now we have a little bit of highlights going on in there. Wash that brush. Definitely wash these small brushes. They dry out so quick. Do not leave them in the water, because if you leave them in the water, they'll spread out and it's hard to get them into a point again, and you'll end up having to cut a lot of bristles off. Alright, so we're going to go back to our stiff bristled fan brush and our green. Remember, we're going to start with the dark green or medium green here. There's a little black in my green. It's the green with the brown. And then we'll add just a little bit of black, darken it even more. Alright. So now we're going to get our tree going here. And there's going to be some light coming through. Don't fill it in completely, because the sun does peek through sometimes. If you go out and look out your window, you'll see what I'm talking about. The sun does peek through. Alright, so now we got that. You see I have a lot of light still coming through. Kind of wipe that off. Now I'm going to take my green, brown, and a lot of yellow. Alright, so now I'm going to come in here and dab some of this shade in. And you see I wanted it a little different than this back here, so that you don't mix the two together and think, oh, it's all one shrub in the back. That's why I put a lot more yellow in this tree, so it'll stand out against the back trees that we have. It won't blend in as much. So you have to change your greens up just a little so they don't fade out into this, okay? Okay, so now we have that going. Now we're going to put some white into that and make it a lot lighter here. Into that, that's that yellow. The last color we just used, we're going to add a little white to it. Come up with our last shade here. Now do a little more highlighting there. I might have gone just a little too light. I'll just put some of that back in. Some of our dark. I lost some. Alright, so now we have our tree, we have our shade. Now we're going to do a fence line here. Get that in here. Here we go. Alright, now for our fence line, we're going to go to that color we made for the tree trunk, the watered down black and brown. And a small brush, a little liner brush. So that's black, brown, and water, so that it goes on smooth for us. Now the fence posts closest to you are going to be a little taller and a little fatter. Okay, so there's my first one. And as I go up, They're further away. As we go, they get shorter, thinner, and closer together. This is a tad taller. I made this one a little chunky, so I'm going to show you a little trick. Get a flat brush, wet it, and water becomes your eraser. Okay. These don't have to be perfectly straight. Some of them you can make lean, you know, because maybe the fence is starting to lean. It's an old fence. And sometimes they start leaning over. All right, so now we have a fence line. Now we're going to put a little color in that because you still have a little light hitting it, so you're going to have different values of this shade. So let's put a little highlights in here. We're going to have to highlight each one of these. Just a little hit and miss. It's not solid. A lot of people want to come all the way down and make a solid line. It's hit and miss highlights. All right, let's get that one in. I kind of covered that up. Good thing about acrylics, you mess up, you can just start over right on top of it. All right, so we have our fence line. We have some highlights in it. Now we need our bobbed wire. This is going to be a wire fence. So we're going to get a really thin brush here, a really thin liner brush. Make sure there's water in our, again, the black and brown. Make sure there's plenty of water in it so it goes on nice and thin. And we're going to just bring our lines across the top. We're going to get this oops, too much there. We're going to have 3 lines coming across. You'll have 3 or 4 on a barbed wire fence. Usually it's 4. We're just going to do 3 today. If there's not enough water in this, it won't go on a thin line. It'll go on clumps. So make sure you have it thinned down, but not so thin that you can't see it. Because if you have too much water, then it's just so transparent you can't see the line. Ooh, that came out too thick. Wipe that off real fast. If there's areas where my line doesn't quite go all the way across, I don't worry about it, because the further away it is, you're not going to see all that line anyway. All right, so now we're going to do just the hit and miss highlights on this. So we're going to take add just a little white to that, make a light color, very light, add water to it so it goes on thin. Still using the same brush. And I'm going to do just a little bit of light on top of these. This has got water in it, so it's going on a lot softer and easier for me. And as I get further away, I'm not going to do the light. Okay, I'll do a little on the top. Some hit and miss. It's not going to be all of them, just a little hit and miss. All right, so now we have our, let's kind of cover that one up, didn't we? All right, so now we have fence, our barbed wire fence going, our shade, our trees, got everything going on. I'm going to add just a little bit more darkness to this tree up here. I kind of lost my dark shade. Oh, let's see, stiff bristle brush. And as you go along doing this, you'll see where you might need a little more shade or a little more this and that, but also know when to say it's done, know when to quit, Don't overwork it. All right, so now we have a nice little country scene. All left to do, as I always say, put your autograph on there, and now you have a piece of art, okay? Have a nice day, guys. Thanks for joining me.